Good evening. Welcome to the Lessons of Vietnam, where we tell the real story of the American War in Vietnam and the men and women who served. We try to dispel all the myths and so forth out there. I'm your host, Bill Dixon, Vietnam 6768. We're broadcasting from the world headquarters of Nissan Communication Studio. Next one. Now, obviously, if you're viewing us, you don't need all this information, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. To view, just click on to ncvi.org, click on TV show for the live show, which is 8 to 9, second and fourth Wednesday of the month, and you need to tell all your friends about it and give them a copy of this. You can see it on demand at any time. Just go to ncvi.org, TV show, then click on archives. Now, during our presentation tonight, we have a guest. I'll tell you all about him in a few minutes. But if you want to call in and ask him questions or make comments or whatever, be gentle. He was in the Air Force. You know, the Air Force got inconvenience pay in Vietnam rather than combat pay, but that's okay. You know, the ice cream would melt sometimes. But to be part of the show, just give us a call at 919-518-9773, or even better, go on to Skype and go computers 2K voice. That is computers 2K voice, with the K is high, is capital. So that's how to be a part of the show tonight. We'd like for you to come call in and so forth, and we're going to get started now. Next one. What I wanted to do right off to start with, though, is anywhere from 20 to 22 veterans, a lot of them are Vietnam veterans, commit suicide every day. That is a tragedy. We had a function with Leith Toyota this Saturday, and I was talking to a lady, and her son had come back from Afghanistan and had killed himself. And just talking to her just ripped my heart out. And if you're out there or you know someone who needs some help, dial the 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or send a text, or reach out to another veteran, but get some help. Let's see if we can't end or slow down these 20 to 22 veterans a day from taking their own lives, and went out there and fought for our country and us. Let's do what we can for them. Now, what we're going to be talking about tonight is the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation. We're going to be talking a little bit about the Purple Heart itself. We're going to be talking about the Purple Heart Foundation and how it got started in Wake Forest and so forth. But our guest tonight is, now if you look at there, it says, Happy Birthday, Ed. I had a senior moment. I lost the program early today, and in the trying to get it all put back together again, I changed his name. I think his name was Ed up until yesterday. Today is his birthday, and he's changed his name to Greg. But it's Greg, and I have it up there on the top too. His name is Greg Harrington. He is a veteran. He's a member of the town of Wake Forest, North Carolina Board of Commissioners, a member of the board of the Purple Heart Foundation. That's the group out of Wake Forest who put together the foundation and so forth. Now I'm going to get you some information about Ed. Ed, you are a North Carolina native.
Who are you talking to?
I'm Greg. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I
So you
appreciate
got
that.
me doing that again. I knew an Ed Harrington, and I keep mixing them up. Yes, I'm okay. All right. You were a North Carolina native, you said, from Little City.
That is correct.
Okay. Northwestern part of the state, almost in Virginia. Okay, let's see. And you were in the Air Force, so you joined the service.
I did.
What year did you go to Vietnam?
1972.
1972, and you were stationed at Da Nang, I believe you told me.
Da Nang Air Base, that's correct.
Okay. And what did you do there?
Security police.
Security police, okay. That means you pull security around the runways and all over everywhere.
We did. The outline areas, the outside baseline, the inner core of the base, everywhere.
Mm-hmm. What was the living conditions y'all had there?
From what I understand, when we were there, we lived in hooches, which was much better than the Quonset huts that the previous people lived in. So I felt like we had pretty good living conditions, according to what I heard from others.
Yeah. Now, I stayed in Hooches at Long Bend. When I was there, we had half a wall of wood and wire on top of that, wire mesh, get some ventilation, and so forth. And
No, these were just wooden houses.
okay, just regular buildings.
Regular buildings.
Okay.
And the latter part of the year that I was there, we did move into some barracks that when we moved into a different compound than what we were first living in.
Now, is it a rumor that y'all had air conditioning?
If they did, I didn't see any of it. And I'm not an air conditioned person, so
Yeah.
I'm one of these that I love the weather in Vietnam. I'm a
Yeah.
hot weather person.
Yeah. All right. And so you were there for what? Do you know what month you were there?
Yes, from February 20s, I'm sorry, from March 15th, 72 to February 22nd, 73.
There was still war going on back then.
Oh, yes. Yes, we were hit about maybe 2-3 nights with rockets and mortars.
Yeah, that
and
was. I
several
would say
people were shot
that
at.
was a
with
nice
mortar.
place. But you had bound to have had lots of rockets and mortars on a regular basis.
Well, it was called Rocket City, USA.
Yeah.
That was the nickname.
Now, what kind of the bombers didn't take off from there, did it? It was mostly the fighter planes.
Yes, we had F-4s taking off there. The only bomber, the B-52, we had one land there because it was shot up so bad during a bombing mission that it had to land. They were afraid that it would not be able to land because the runway wasn't that long, but it used up every inch of the runway landing and also every inch of the runway when it took off.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's Da Nang today is a gorgeous place. Planes coming in and out around Marble Mountain had to be interesting the way the runways were turned, but you did say that you got to visit China Beach at one time.
I went there one time, yes. It was just, you wouldn't believe you're in Vietnam. It's such a beautiful place.
Yeah.
White sand.
Well, it's still got white sand, but it's not much looking at the military now. And all right, so what was your rank at the time?
I was just E2, I believe it was.
E2, okay.
Airman first class.
Well, some do that. Now, when you flew in, did you fly in through 95th placement at Bien Hoa Air Base? Did you fly directly into Da Nang, or did you fly into what was the one a little bit farther north, Cam Ranh Bay? Which
Cam Ranh was a little bit south of us, but no, I flew into Da Nang.
okay, Cam Ranh was okay.
It was in
You flew
Saigon.
right into Da Nang then.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have an opportunity to go into Saigon?
No, I did not. I never left the base other than the one time I went to the beach.
Okay. All right. Well, that kind of gives you an idea that he is a Vietnam vet, served his time, did a good job. He came home. Now let's talk a little bit about the Purple Heart Foundation. This is one of the sayings. Let it be known that he who wears the military order of the Purple Heart has given his blood in defense of his homeland and shall forever be revered by his fellow countrymen. And the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation is P.O. Box 168, Wake Forest, North Carolina, 27588. And the email address is info@wakeforestpurpleheartfoundation.org. Okay. Now, Greg, y'all started your organization, you and some other guys started the Purple Heart Foundation. What brought that about, and why did you do it, and who's it for?
Well, we started in May of 2009. For 14 years prior to that, there was a committee that had put on a basketball tournament to raise money for different charities in Wake Forest. And over the course of those 14 years, we raised close to $200,000 for these different charities. Well, in early May, the founder of the basketball tournament and I and a young lady were sitting to have a lunch, and we knew that was going to be the last year of the basketball tournament. And we're sitting around thinking, how can we do something else for our community? What could we do? We just started bouncing around ideas, and none of us to this day can really tell you how the idea came up for the Purple Heart Foundation. We decided that we needed to do something for the men and women that have served our country, that had been wounded in battle. So we just called it the Purple Heart Foundation, and we wanted to give them a dinner to show our appreciation.
Now, Greg, you do not have a Purple Heart.
I do not have a Purple Heart, no.
But you do a lot of work for the. This is the mission of the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation. Would you want to read that to us?
Sure. The mission of the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation is to provide a forum for the local community to honor Purple Heart recipients and their families, to foster an environment of goodwill among combat wounded veterans, to promote patriotism, and to encourage the sharing of recipient experiences so future generations will know the sacrifices made by the veterans and their families.
Now, this thing has really grown over the last few years.
It has. The first year we had 17 recipients that came to our dinner. We didn't know what to expect, whether we'd have 5, 10, 25, 100. We just didn't know. It was basically put together by word of mouth through a local VFW post. But we were pleased with those 17 recipients. The second year, it grew to about 35, and we have honored up to 55, 56, 57 recipients. Last year, we had about 57 recipients at our dinner, and we had about 500 people in attendance.
It was quite a ceremony, and the Wake Forest ROTC did a fantastic job with the Walk of Honor, which we're talking about. As we just discussed, it was founded in 2009. And they have a banquet, as Greg just mentioned. It's held every year, the week of the National Purple Heart Day, and it's free for Purple Heart recipients and their families. The event's open to the public, and we're going to tell you the address and so forth, which was supposed to be on that page, but on redoing it, I left it off. But that's August 5th, 2017 at 5:30 p.m. and it'll be Richland Creek Community Church, which is off Burlington Mills Road in Wake Forest. And I'll tell you about that in a little bit. But it is open to the public. And our next picture is last year's. That was the keynote speaker, and there's Greg on the end down there. You can see where I got his pictures off, and that's the board of directors.
That is the board of directors. As you can see, Tim Payne was our keynote speaker last year. Tim lost both legs, and I believe in Afghanistan or Iraq. I'm not sure which, but he's a motivational speaker, a wonderful, wonderful person. Did a great job for us.
Yeah, I see several faces in there that I recognize. So that's a good group of men and women. And you said the young lady is she's the vice president of the board, or
co-chair.
Co-chair of the board.
Co-chair,
Okay,
yeah.
of the thing.
Right, Mandy
Okay.
Duguid, girls there in the middle.
Yeah. So it's a great thing. Again, it's the 9th annual Purple Heart Banquet, Saturday, August 5th, 2017. It starts at 5:30. Richland Creek Community Church, which is at 3229 Burlington Mills Road, Wake Forest, North Carolina, 27587, United States. Because I know some of y'all watching all over the world this show. It is in North Carolina. If you live anywhere around, you need to come and so forth. It's hosted by the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation. How many people on the foundation actually have a Purple Heart?
We have one right now.
Okay.
We had another recipient that was on a board last year, but he died.
Okay.
Don Coons. He had been in North Carolina about 3 or 4 years, joined the VFW. We found out he was a Purple Heart recipient. We asked him to join our board. Did a wonderful job. Just a great guy, but unfortunately he did die last year.
So this group is a group of men and women who do not have Purple Hearts, but go out there and do the efforts and the work that it takes. And I tell you, folks, if you've never done something like this banquet, there's a lot of work in putting something as special as this is. It's not a throw it together affair. This affair is quite an event. The banquet invites the public to honor those wounded in battle. In addition to Purple Heart medal recipients and their families, the banquet again is open to all veterans, military families, and the public. Now, if you'd like, you can sponsor a Purple Heart recipient. They have to pay. The foundation pays for the meals, and so if you can't attend, you still like to help. You got the address and everything. You can sponsor a veteran or their family at Purple Heart for $20, and we'll again, you go back to information there where it's at, and I'll give you some information about how to get in touch with them and so forth. All right, the next one is last year. The young men and women of the ROTC hold a walk of honor where the Medal of Honor, the Purple Heart recipients walk down the swords and so forth. And nobody got cut, so that was successful. But just seeing those guys walk down that walk of honor and seeing them walk by, the expression on their face was worth whatever it took to get there. So, you want to say something about that? Or?
Yeah, let me, looking at this picture here, the man on the right-hand side here, that's Don Croons. This was actually the year before last, a picture of him.
Okay.
Year before last. So I just thought I'd throw that in,
All right.
that
That's
he
good.
was a valued member of our board.
Okay. Well, that's, like I said, that was the walk of honor. And this year, this is going to be your keynote speaker, Major General Douglas Lanier Carver, United States Army, born September 10th, 1951, another young guy. He's retired American Army officer who served as 22nd Chief of Chaplains of the United States Army. He was appointed to this assignment on July 12, 2007, and was the first Southern Baptist chaplain to be promoted to the position of Chief of Chaplains in more than 50 years. I guess he lives in Wake Forest. It's been
I
an area.
think he lives in the Charlotte area,
does he? Okay.
if I'm not mistaken, yes. And as a Southern Baptist, I'm proud to have him as our speaker this year. We've had excellent speakers over the course of 9 years. We've had a Medal of Honor winner, had a captain that was blinded just before he left Iraq. And since he lost his sight, he's graduated from Duke University School of Business. He has climbed Mount Rainier. He surfed off the beaches of Hawaii. And he teaches leadership classes at West Point. Medal of Honor winner from Vietnam, Colonel Dandy McKnight. Some of you may recognize his name. If you remember the Black Hawk Down incident in Somalia, he was in charge of the ground forces there. We had a four-star general. He was the first African-American person to go through every rank of the military from private all the way up to four-star general. He spoke a couple of years ago. We've had some excellent speakers, and I'm looking forward to a General Carver this year.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of a collage of one of the Purple Heart banquets and so forth. I see the man in the red jacket there is a very special soldier himself, Iwo Jima,
Yes, he was.
George Catalone.
Catalan. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and we have a band there, and we have the chaplain of state of North Carolina, VFW chaplain, better known as Santa Claus, Jim Dyer, is there, and
Jim was a member of our VFW post.
I remember VFW post, and you can see another couple there, and then you see the ROTC marching in with the flag. So a lot of stuff going on, and it's really quite an experience and so forth. Now, this event creates a great deal of interest within the community. Wake Forest is probably one of the most veteran-friendly communities I've ever had anything to do with. And they always looking for sponsors to help finance this. I think they told me that it was like, they cost $20 for the meal.
That's correct.
Which is the price of the ticket. And if you'd like to make a contribution, all contributions will be solely for the event, which will be orchestrated through all volunteer staff work. Nobody gets paid on the foundation board.
That's correct.
Any donations are tax deductible, and sponsors will receive recognition both leading up to and during the event. It's a great event. It's, like I said, it's tax deductible. Just so in case you want to know, the red sponsor is $100. You get your name listed in the program. The white sponsor is $250. Sponsor's name listed in program and all media advertisements. The blue sponsor is $500. Sponsor's name listed in program and all media advertisements. Sponsor recognized during the dinner. Gold Star sponsors $1,000 and above. Sponsor name listed in the program, all media advertisements. Sponsor recognized and thanked during the dinner. If you want to make a donation, write a check out to the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation and mail it to P.O. Box 168, Wake Forest, North Carolina 27588, and help them to reach out to more Purple Heart recipients and their families. It's nice to be able to bring the Purple Heart recipient and his family in for the program because it is a family thing.
Yeah, if I could say, course, the Purple Heart recipient gets in free, and then we give him 3 tickets to use ever how you like to use them with family members, friends, or whatever. But he gets 3 free tickets, and all the money, like I say, goes to the dinner. But we also provide a gift for each of the Purple Heart recipient. Every year we buy a gift. It can range anywhere from the first year was $10 or $12 all the way up to a couple of years ago we spent $65 per recipient for a gift, just to show our appreciation for what they've done for our country.
That's in the bags.
That is in the bag. We give them a little gift bag. That's correct.
This is a letter that was written to one of the Purple Heart recipients who attended the banquet, and I'd like to read it to you. On behalf of the Purple Heart recipients who attended, we say heartfelt thank you to you and all that made it possible. It was our welcome home parade for those of us who served in Vietnam. It was a great to have participated in the Walk of Honor and have a special place at the tables. This was my first dinner, and I will always treasure the memories of it and hope to attend again. Again, thanks to all that made it possible. Yours in patriotism, Jesse Torres, Adjutant, Military Order of the Purple Heart of the USA, Almeyer Chapter 637 in Hillsborough. And last year we did a little bit about about the foundation and banquet, and Jesse was here and talked a little bit about it and so forth. So Jesse's been kind of laid up. He had a little bit of a motorcycle accident and was laid up for a while. Now this is another letter from someone who was there, and I'm going to ask Greg to read that one.
I'll read it. I'm trying not to get emotional when I read it. Dear Foundation members, my wife and I had the distinct honor and pleasure to attend the annual Purple Heart dinner your group hosted last Saturday evening at the Wake Forest Presbyterian Church. We were truly impressed with how well you had planned and organized the event, down to every minor detail. It started when we arrived to find assistance with parking, being escorted to our specific assigned locations, and courteously welcomed by everyone we came in contact with. The delightful meal was surpassed only by the wonderful program of events you had planned and presented for us. In addition to expressing my gratitude and inviting me to your special event, I would like to encourage your continued efforts to recognize those who have given much in service to our great country. I hope our nation will never again allow political agendas to cause behaviors that make our veterans feel the service was not appreciated, or even worse, to be condemned for answer America's call. Your recent efforts have caused this veteran to feel a sense of pride that I did not know I would ever be able to feel, and I am confident your future efforts will be contagious in spreading that feeling to many other souls more worthy than I. Again, I thank each of you for all your work, and I wish you great success in your efforts. God bless you, and God bless America. With kindest regards and deepest respect, Hartwell Wright.
That kind of gives you an idea of how much it means to the Purple Heart recipients. I keep trying to say POWs because we were talking about them earlier. The Purple Heart recipients, how much it touches them. At this time, I want to invite you to call in if you like and ask Greg a question. Give him a hard time for being in the Air Force.
We like ice cream.
Whatever, but that's okay. He could have been in the Marines or something. 919-518-9773, or as a Skype, is Computers 2K Voice. But join us in a little bit, so forth and there. And we're going to keep right on moving along, waiting for your call. And if you don't call, if you're too interested in the show, that's okay. Just send your check. Let's talk a little bit about the Purple Heart itself. The Purple Heart is a United States military decoration awarded in name of the President to those wounded or killed while serving on or after April 5th, 1917 with the U.S. military. Now, it has to be in combat, from what I understand.
That is correct.
Okay? With its forerunner, the Badge of Military Merit, which took the form of a heart made of purple cloth, the Purple Heart is the oldest military award still given to U.S. military members. The only earlier award being the obsolete Fidelity Medallion. Now, anybody that you see that has the Purple Heart insignia earned that by being injured in combat. It was not from leeches or scratching themselves. These people got wounded in a combat situation. They were doing everything they could for us. Now, this is the original Purple Heart. The badge of military merit was first announced in General George Washington's general orders to the Continental Army issued on August 7, 1782. It was designed by Washington in the form of a Purple Heart. It was intended as a military order for soldiers who exhibit not only instances of unusual gallantry in battle, but also extraordinary fidelity and essential service in any way. The writings of General Washington indicate there were three badges that were, for wars. Two, the honorary badge of distinction and badge of military merit, and they were created by him August 7th, 1782. This is thought to be the first time in modern history. Now, it's hard to look back at 1782 as being modern history, but it was the first time in history that military awards had been presented to common soldiers. The practice in Europe was to honor high-ranking officers who had achieved victory rather than honoring common soldiers. But in America, as George Washington said, the road to glory in a patriot army and a free country is open to all. He wanted to make sure that the men who's serving received the award, not officers and so forth. The general ever desires to cherish virtuous and ambitious soldiers, as well as to foster and encourage every species of military merit, directs that whenever any singular meritorious action is performed, the author of it shall be permitted to wear on his facing over the left breast the figure of a heart in purple cloth or silk edged with a narrow lace of binding, which was the one we just showed you a while ago that looked like it was handmade, because it probably was. Not only instances of unusual gallantry, but also of extraordinary fidelity and essential service in any way shall meet with their due reward. Now, in 1932, the United States War Department authorized a new Purple Heart Medal for soldiers who had previously received either a Wounded Chevron or Army Wound Ribbon. At that time, it was determined that the Purple Heart Medal would be considered the official successor decoration of the Badge of Military Merit. So the Purple Heart itself was one of the first military ribbons, but that was changed over the period of time to recognize those who shed blood for this country and so forth. So, would you like to add anything to that? Or?
Yeah, I would like to say that of all the people that we have come to our dinner, all the recipients, not all of them were just a single Purple Heart recipient. Some have received 3 and 4 Purple Hearts. So you know that they didn't run, they didn't hide, they gave to their country. And that's what one of the reasons we have this dinner. We appreciate these men and women so much. They fought and that they served, and that's a testament to our military, and we thank them.
And to the men and women of the United States. You know, back in our time, you either joined or you got the letter from Uncle Sam or the president going, greetings, where today the young men and women step up and go, I'm willing to put my life on hold and to risk my life to go fight for our country. Those are special young men. We hear so much about the young today, but these young men and women who go out now deserve anything we can get them. So if you live in the Research Triangle area and like to meet some real American heroes, these are the real celebrities. These are not the pretend celebrities you see at movies and so forth. Attend the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation banquet and go up and shake their hands. They're sitting there. You'll be able to find them. They are stand out in the banquet and go up and shake their hand, get the autograph. If they have time, get some of their story. Or sponsor a Purple Heart recipient and their families by making a donation. Even better, do both. I'll see you there. Again, Saturday, August 5th, 2017 at 5:30, Richland Creek Community Church, 3229 Burlington Mills Road, Wake Forest, North Carolina. Now, I realize this was a little bit of a variation from what we normally do the show, but these guys do such a fantastic job, and it's an opportunity to meet real American heroes. I mean,
absolutely.
You've probably, those of you who've been with this show from the beginning, you know one of the people we've had on the show was Brigadier General Norman Gaddis, served in World War II in Vietnam. He was a POW for over 3 years. The things and the torture he went through, you've heard him talk about on the show. to me, it's a special time to see him walk down that walk of honor and see him there and so forth. He's about, let's see, Norman, you about 94 range now, maybe even a little older than that, but he's quite a character and so forth. So,
If I could interject too about the Purple Heart Foundation, not only is it held in Wake Forest, through the efforts of the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation, we created the North Carolina Purple Heart Foundation. And right now we have dinners in, I believe it'll be 6 different cities this year. Goldsboro was our first year outside of Wake Forest. Then we had a dinner in Winston-Salem, Charlotte, Wilmington, I believe Jacksonville last year, and I think we're going to Fayetteville this year, if I'm not mistaken. So this is spread not just in our area, but we want to do it across North Carolina.
how would they find out information? Could they go to the website, the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation, and get the
They
information?
go to the North Carolina Purple Heart Foundation.
North Carolina Purple Heart Foundation website.
Correct.
And that would give you in your city, so you can get involved.
Right.
If someone is watching and they'd like to get started on a foundation and do the same thing in their city, they could contact y'all through the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation.
They could, but they can probably do it better through the North Carolina Purple Heart Foundation
Okay.
if they want to get involved in their particular city.
All right. So if you would like to get behind and have your own recognition of Purple Heart recipients in your area, it's a great undertaking, very honorable thing. Go online to the North Carolina Purple Heart Foundation website and get your information and so forth. Again, this is a little bit different, but I wanted to make sure that the foundation was able to continue growing and reaching out to Purple Hearts. If you're anywhere, as I just said, across the state of North Carolina or in another state, and you would like the information about starting a Purple Heart Foundation, I believe the one in Wake Forest was one of the first in the country, and probably wasn't the first, but it was one of the first.
And they could call us if they
nationwide.
want to start one. We'll be glad to help anybody set one up if they want to do it.
So there's your invitation right there for the help. You just need some bodies that are willing to work and sacrifice for themselves and so forth. So we're going to jump back to a whole different category now. Let's just talk about this is a book by a young lady by the name of Kate Webb. She was born in New Zealand. She was she was a reporter, and she read about herself dying one time, and I'm going to tell you the story about how she read her own obituary. She died in 2007, age of 64, from bowel cancer. She was one of a very remarkable women in her trade. Her passing comes 36 years after she first read her death notices in the world's newspaper. It's a great book if you want to get it and so forth and read it by Kate Webb. On April 7th, 1971, a 28-year-old bureau chief for the United Press International, UPI, Kate was covering a clash on Highway 4 south of Phnom Penh with the Cambodian Army in the Kiron Mountains. Now, that's probably not the way it's spelled or pronounced, but you know how my pronouncing is, so you can call it what you want to. As bullets flew from every direction between the North Vietnamese and United States-backed Cambodian troops, Webb and her Cambodian interpreter dived into a ditch. You want to get as low as you can get. By the time they belly crawled their way out, 4 other refugees from the attack had joined them. A Japanese photojournalist and his Cambodian interpreter, along with a Cambodian newspaper journalist and a Cambodian photographer. Throughout the afternoon, they probably didn't have water or anything else. Throughout the afternoon and night, the 6 of them crept through the wooded foothills of Cambodia's Elephant Mountains, holding their breath as they sometimes were within inches of chatting North Vietnamese soldiers. Now here they are, non-combatants, on the battlefield, and they know the bad guys are there. They're not trained to go through this experience. At 11:30 the next morning, tired, thirsty, their clothes and skins shredded by branches, they were crouching in underbrush when they looked up to see 2 skinny North Vietnamese soldiers with AK-47s. The soldiers bound Webb's arms behind her back with wire and tape and then roped all the captives together in a single line and marched them off. They confiscated their notebooks, their ID cards, their cameras, and their watches. They also took one thing that Webb held dear, a gold Chinese charm that she wore around her neck. This charm, she had clung to that charm in foxholes and other places where battles are going on, and she always came out alive, and she felt like it was her good luck charm, and now she didn't have it, and she felt naked. But other than being captured, this turned out to be a lucky break because the usual enemy in this area would have been the brutal Cambodian Khmer Rouge, who always killed their prisoners. But they were captured by the North Vietnamese army. Now, Kate talks about in her book when she was captured, she recalls being interrogated by an older man, and he says, "Do you realize you are a prisoner of war and that one shot through the head could finish you just like that?" And Kate tells him, "That's up to you now. In other words, it's your choice. I can't do nothing about it. Besides, I don't consider myself a prisoner of war. I'm not a soldier." So then the interrogator kind of chuckled and said, "Consider yourself an invited guest then." I guess that, and it says she says they all laughed. I'm not certain about that, but see, back at in Saigon and all the places where all the journalists were, they assumed that it was the Khmer Rouge had captured her and that she was dead. About 3 weeks, the first obituaries began to appear. Time magazine reported that a burned white woman's body had been found in a shallow grave with a bullet in the head and other in the chest. So they reported Webb was the 10th journalist known to have died in Cambodia. Her family held a memorial service for her. But 23 days after being captured, she stumbled out of the jungle along with some other captivities, and after enduring forced marches, interrogations, malaria, bugs, and everything else, she came down with malaria, and it almost killed her just from having the malaria and so forth. But then she kind of enjoyed reading, and she started reading her obituary and so forth, and found out that they thought she was dead. Then the next one that goes back to a gentleman we've had on the show, John Pulaski. John wrote a book about Vietnam called Cherries, fantastic book. He also does a blog called Cherries, and if you really like some good information about Vietnam and different points and so forth, tune in to his blog and so forth. Look up Cherries, and it's his blogs. He has a lot of guests and so forth. But he was going into a classroom, and which I do on a regular basis, and speaking to students sometime who do not have any comprehension of war, Vietnam War, or war at all. As I mentioned before, I went into a class one time, and a young girl came in and wanted to know where the dogs were. And we said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well, somebody told us there were going to be vets here, and I thought maybe they're going to have dogs." She thought we were a bunch of veterinarians coming in to speak to class. But he's into speaking to class. Speaking to a class of high school students, it was difficult for them to fathom that food, water, clothing, and personal hygiene products were not readily available in the boonies or the jungles, for those of you who are not used to Vietnam language. For the infantry soldier, meals consisted of canned sea rations left over from World War II in Korea. The menu and amount depended upon how much a soldier wanted to carry on his back over the next 3 to 4 days. In other words, you carried everything that you were going to eat, sleep, or do whatever with you when you went out. It don't sound like much, but to press my point, I suggested the next time they went to the supermarket, they should try collecting a dozen different meals in various size cans. Take enough to last 3 to 4 days. I offered up examples like cans of spaghetti or ravioli, tuna, veggies, soup, fruits, and meats. All should be placed in a single container and weighed to see what the total weight might be. See, weight means everything in the brush. You don't want to carry anything that you don't have to carry. You find a lot of new guys go out the first time, and as they go along, they're throwing stuff away off the side because everything gets heavy. The bare necessities, along with which they carry, were ammunition, which is a real necessity, grenades, trip flares, hand flares, claymore mines, poncho and a liner, mortar rounds, a 100-round belt of machine gun ammo for the machine gunner, weapon cleaning equipment, and personal stuff inside a waterproof ammo can. Personal stuff would be basically things to maybe a toothbrush, writing material and a pen, envelopes, something like that. There wasn't a whole lot of personal stuff. Now add to the food and water and steel helmet, weapon, and more ammunition. We have water problems. If you were out, didn't want to run out of water. Water is a necessity. So how much should they carry? How much water are you willing to lug around all day for 3 days? Each quart of water weighs a little over 2 pounds. During the dry season, water sources were not readily available, and each soldier had to carry a minimum of 6 one-quart canteens just to get him through to the next resupply 3 to 4 days later. Now, we had Paul White on the show, and they got pretty desperate for water there. He talks about they were drinking the urine. I got thirsty, but I never got that thirsty. So ration water and availability to take care of personal hygiene needs such as washing your face, hands, hair, or feet was a rare occurrence. In other words, you had to drink that water. You were not going to take a bath, wash your face, or anything else. It just wasn't going to be done. Now, during the monsoon season, it rained daily for months, and water was plentiful. Bomb craters filled with water and became sources for both drinking water and bathing. But you're always wet anyway if you were down in the Delta area. Now, canteens filled from these bomb craters or streams had to be treated with iodine tablets to kill parasites and other organisms and swimming stuff before it can be consumed or floated and all. The water is often a murky color and had a slight odor. Oh boy, did it. And after 30 minutes, it was supposed to be safe to drink. As I've mentioned before, you take your canteen, you fill it up with water, kind of keep as many creepy crawlers out as you can. You know within an hour, if you drink this water, you're going to die from every disease known to man. But the government, in its military wisdom, gives you these iodine tablets. You put it in there and shake it up real good. And if you're really lucky, mom, dad, wife, girlfriend sent you some Kool-Aid or Tang and so forth. And he says here, I've seen times when ran out of drinking water the day before and came upon a pond or trickling stream to fill the canteens. This was a critical time and extremely difficult for us to wait the allotted time before taking a drink. In other words, you got to treat the water and you can't drink it right there immediately. You got to wait just a little bit for it to take care of it. But sometimes guys didn't want to wait and they paid a price, suffering intestinal inflammation and other maladies. Packets of Kool-Aid, as I mentioned, lemonade, Tang, and others helped to camouflage the metallic taste in floaters where iodine was used. It didn't get rid of the iodine taste or whatever the taste of water was, but it did make it a little bit better. Okay. Now, a side note to that water, we were told as we out in the jungle or whatever and got sprayed, y'all probably had a lot of helicopters and so forth at Da Nang Air Base that did a lot of Agent Orange and so forth spraying.
We did.
Have you had any problems with from Agent Orange?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. You might want to get on the Agent Orange register anyway. But hadn't thought about it before, but you're drinking water out of the stream. But the Agent Orange had leached into the groundwater in the streams. Rinsed from vegetation when used to catch cold, refreshing rainwater as drops fell from the trees and surrounding foliage. Now, you would think that water coming out of rain and you catching it off a leaf would be nice and clean, but it kind of washed the leaves of the Agent Orange as it came down through. So I don't think iodine tablets were strong enough to protect us, though, from the Agent Orange and so forth. So okay. Now let's talk about the fatigues. The jungle fatigues worn by soldiers were lightweight and designed to dry quickly, thin material. However, during these humps through the jungle, fatigues were continuously soaked through with sweat, ripped by thorny vines, worn out by repeatedly crawling on the ground, and were never available in your size. I went out with the 9th Infantry guys, and they were in rags. They told me that most of the time the uniforms would last them anywhere from 3 to 4 months before they were just nothing at all whatsoever. Extra clothing sometimes came out on resupply, but normally only enough for usually half of the men. Now, these extra clothes, quite often, who came out were clothes that were taken from wounded soldiers in a pile or thrown in the pile and so forth, not necessarily new stuff. Everyone, okay. It was best to smell like the rotting jungles you lived in and offering you up the identical scent. You didn't want to, even if you had the soap to go out there and take a bath, you didn't want to take that soap because they could smell you. The Vietnamese ate their fish sauce, nuc mam, and it was really strong. You could smell them sometimes before you saw them. So there was nobody to impress in the bush, so you didn't have to worry about keeping your hair clone or whatever. And most, not of all, who could care less. At times, we were able to smell approaching enemy soldiers because their diet of fish, rice, and fermented sauce, nuc mam, and sometimes the scent of burning weed when they smoked it. Okay. Returning to the fire base after a month in the jungle was well received by everyone except helicopter crews and those in the fire base. Now, just think about it. These guys on the helicopter got to pick these guys up who hadn't had a bath and God knows when, out sweating all day in the dirt. And they had to keep in the helicopter to take them back to the base, or they walked in through the gate and the guards and so forth. The stench of returning warriors was unbearable to those greeting them at the gate, or the security police from the Air Force when they come back in. Many of us laughed because we didn't notice anything different in the way we smelled. However, we were quick to note a clean and sterile soapy smell as we entered the compound. It's weird but true. And you can see them taking a shower there. I think that sign that the guy's got right there short is, well, he's getting ready to go home. Let's just go at that rate that right there. We'll just say he's short time getting ready to come home. Food, water, and clothes were in abundance at the fire base. Everyone could eat, drink, and shower as much as they chose. Sometimes they even got to sleep on a cot. Not all the time, but most of the time. This short visit lasted 3 days. Then it was time to leave on another long jungle adventure amongst the bugs, tigers, mosquitoes, leeches, snakes, booby traps, heat, humidity, and bad guys. I want to thank you for joining our show tonight. Tell all your friends about us, the show. Looking forward to our next live Lessons of Vietnam show, July 12th. It will either be on Bobby Garwood, the last POW, or Vietnam, Gulf War I, Gulf War II, and Afghanistan, similarities and differences, or have a guest. I'm working on all three different shows. I'm not certain which one we're going to have yet, but I would like to especially thank Greg Harrington for coming on his birthday. I would sing happy birthday, but none of you would ever tune in again because I can't carry a tune at all. The Purple Heart Foundation for having him come in. He's on board of directors for that. And again, if you want more information about it, it's the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation.org, 9th Annual Purple Heart Banquet, Saturday, August 5th, 2017, 5:30 p.m., Richland Creek Community Church, 3229 Burlington Mills Road, Wake Forest, North Carolina. Now, thank you very much for my audience there. Greg, we've talked a little bit about it. You got anything you want to just follow up with and about the foundation and what y'all do? And
Yeah, I would like to emphasize something you said earlier. You know, if you come to the banquet, you come to these men and they'll be glad to talk with you. They're not just Purple Heart recipients. These are real American heroes. They have won Bronze Stars. They've won silver medals. They won the Distinguished Service Cross. They're not just Purple Heart recipients. These are the heroes. They're not athletes. They're not actors. They're men and women, ordinary men and women who go to work every day that have dedicated their lives to serving our country. As I said earlier, they didn't run. They didn't hide. They went to the recruiter. They raised their right hand, took an oath to serve the country, and that's what they did. And that's what we're so proud of them for. We appreciate their service. We appreciate the JROTC that comes out to assist us every year. They provide a valuable service to us. They have the honor guard. That's when we call out each veteran's name when we introduce them. They walk under the cross sabers of the JROTC. They're honored, and that's the purpose of having a dinner. They're the ones that make this night. It's not us. It's not the board members. We're not there for any recognition. We're not there on our behalf. We're there on their behalf. And naturally, it takes money to run this. It costs us anywhere between 10 to 15, 16, $17,000 every year to be able to put this event on. So we certainly ask if you'd like to make a donation, please go to the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation.org. You can make a donation online. If you don't feel like you can make a large donation, we'll accept $20. It pays for a recipient's dinner.
I imagine you wouldn't turn down a $5 check either.
We won't turn down anything. We appreciate any amount of money that anybody like to give us. And once I say give us, it's not us, it's to the veteran that you're giving it to. And that's who we want to thank.
These guys, men and women who received the Purple Heart, some of them spent years in hospitals, undergoing operations after operations, trying to get back to some normalcy. It's just not necessarily got a scratch. Some of them spent years rehabilitating themselves, and they paid a terrible price, being wounded and how it affected the rest of their life.
They have. We had one quadriplegic came to our dinner for several years, and unfortunately he died, I believe, last year. We've had one recipient still coming that has a traumatic brain injury. He's still coming. We've had a blind soldier. We've had a soldier come that's lost his leg. So yes, you're correct. They're not just been simply wounded. They have given a lot to their country.
Well, the keynote speaker last year lost both legs.
Both legs.
I believe it was his arm was. I know it was both legs, but I was thinking he was one other two. But so that's they're out there. If you know someone in the area that has a Purple Heart, please go online and get information and tell them about the banquet and how to get in touch. Speaking for the board, I'm not a member of the board, but speaking for the board, the Wake Forest Purple Heart Foundation, I know they'd like to honor that veteran who has a Purple Heart by having them come to the banquet. So if you know a Purple Heart recipient out there, encourage them to get more information and come to the banquet. They'll be much better for it, and they will really appreciate how much they are appreciated.
Absolutely. And we don't just take people from the Wake Forest area. We have one man coming up from Currituck County here in North Carolina. We have him come from Chapel Hill, from Henderson, from Rocky Mount, from Johnson County, of course from the Wake Forest. We had one last year from Lynchburg, Virginia. If you know somebody in the area or anywhere, we'll be glad to invite them. We just need their name, address, phone number, and email address if you have. But we need that information so we can get them to our dinner. And like Bill said, once they come, they'll appreciate it. Because, like I said, the first year we had 17 recipients. There were a lot of people we knew that were Purple Heart recipients. They did not want to be recognized because they didn't feel like that was their thing. But after they heard about our dinner and how well we respected them, then they started coming, and they've told others about it. So that's why we've grown up to at least 55, 60 people.
And we'd like to keep right on growing and recognizing more Purple Heart recipients. I know there's a lot of them out there who would enjoy coming. We're going back again to the first slide, one of the first slides I showed you about the crisis line and so forth. There's a lot of guys out there who are having a crisis in their lives. Right now, one of the reasons that a lot of the Vietnam veterans are having trouble with post-traumatic stress, they were so busy when they came back, making a living, raising a family and so forth. Now they're retiring and they got some time on their hands, and all these thoughts are coming back and give them a hard time. So coming back, having someone be able to come back and go, we appreciate the price you paid. Because when we came back from Vietnam, as most of you know, you couldn't tell anybody you were a Vietnam veteran. We were baby killers and everything else. So not just Vietnam veterans, but any veteran out there that has a Purple Heart, encourage them to come.
Absolutely.
Tell them you'll donate the money for their meal or whatever. But we'll find the money. Just get the Purple Heart people to get in touch with Greg and his group by going online and getting that information out. Let's reach out and get all the purple. I'd like to see all the Purple Hearts who live in this area be honored at the banquet.
We would love that. And one of the first things that we do at the beginning of the program, we have a reception for all the Purple Heart recipients. This is before the dinner. They all get together. They can talk to one another. This is the time for them to talk about their own problems, their struggles, whatever, with one another. People that understand what they have gone through, and that's one of the reasons we have this reception. And we found that has been one of the biggest parts of our Purple Heart dinner.
That's pretty much we've done that. Now I want you to be next week. I believe is it's hard to believe, but next week's the 4th of July. Very special time. The first Saturday, which happens to be July 1st, will be the monthly ceremony at the North Carolina Capitol grounds, where the names of the 39 from North Carolina still missing in the Vietnam War will be held. Ceremony honoring those 39. Also, there will be a ceremony at the Capitol on July 4th. At 12 o'clock will be a nationalization ceremony for people who get their American citizenships. And immediately following that will be another ceremony of recognizing the 39 men who are still missing and their families from the Vietnam War. So on your 4th of July, take some time and think about the Purple Heart recipients and all the men and women who served our country all these years out there, so we could be free and have our cookouts and go to the fireworks display. And I think Wake Forest's fireworks displays on the 3rd.
July the 3rd, that's correct.
And they're going to have the Band of Oz, I believe, there,
That's
and
correct.
some other stuff. I have been there quite a few times. It's quite an event.
I get to play Uncle Sam.
Since the fireworks went off one time in the stands, that was several years ago. Hadn't happened since then. It's been a long time ago, but it's quite a fireworks display. Come over to Wake Forest and see the fireworks display. There'll be other fireworks going on, but I tell you, as a Vietnam veteran, I don't like fireworks particularly myself. Because I've seen the real thing. Again, thank you for tuning in to the show. Looking forward to seeing you July 12th for our next show. And you have a wonderful 4th of July, and we'll see you next show. Thank you.
Thank
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.